Hi everybody, DUGROZ here with DUGROZ Reports. Welcome to another episode of Frugal Points, where I drive in my car and talk to you about the philosophical side of points and miles. Today's topic is, why do we do the points and miles game? Is it because we really want to travel, or we love playing the game? Before I dive in on this particular YouTube channel, I talk about finding epic value, including, but not limited to, credit card rewards. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and click the thumbs up button. Let's dive in. So, a needle pulling thread. We know that what's out there on the blogs, on the big Points and Miles YouTube channel, is something like this. The world of points and miles is something that enables you to travel in ways that you would not be able to apart from points and miles. And that could be frequency of travel, it could be destinations of travel, it could be style of travel. So, I think I've mentioned before I got into points and miles, I would budget around $1,500 to $2,000 a year for family travel. That doesn't get you very far. Like, trips we took beforehand were often around the Midwest. In fact, the last big trip I specifically remember taking before points and miles was we went to a cabin in Missouri that I got on. It was something like Verbo. I don't think it's even in business anymore. Stayed there for like 5 days and went rafting down a river. And that was nice. But, there was no flying involved. It wasn't very luxurious. There was no breakfast provided. Family of 4. Our kids were little, probably 7 or so at that time. I remember my wife and I took a trip to Keosauqua, Iowa when we were first married, and stayed in like a bed and breakfast that cost like $75 a day, and that was okay, but not great. Even my honeymoon 24 years ago was to the UP of Michigan, and again we drove. I actually can't remember a flying vacation that my nuclear family took prior to Points and Miles. We flew a couple times. We flew to Arizona because that's where her parents live, my wife's parents. But that was usually not just for a vacation. That was to go visit Grandma and Grandpa. And then my childhood family, like my mom and dad, sister, her family, my parents paid for us to fly to Florida a couple times into my adulthood and early marriage. But like just me and Mrs. DUGROZ and our 2 kids, to the best of my knowledge, we never flew anywhere on our dime just for vacation. Earlier in marriage, I went on a work trip and she went with me, but that was the work paying for plane tickets. So I think you could safely argue that yes, in terms of both quantity and destination, I would not be able to do any kind of travel close to what I'm doing now since 2019, apart from the benefit of points and miles. And then in terms of the quality, I mean, yeah, we have had 2 really big family vacations on points and miles so far. Once to England and Sweden, and then once to Washington, D.C. Before that, we had a moderately large vacation to the Grand Canyon, a moderately large vacation to northern Wisconsin, and stayed in a cabin. But from here on out, it'll probably be the much bigger ones every summer. So, yeah, I definitely do get more travel. But the question is, like, is that why I'm doing it, or is it because I enjoy the game? Because let's just be honest here, the game is really time-consuming, and if you didn't enjoy it, it would be awfully hard to do. I think you have to have a secondary motive, which could be, like me, I'm a YouTube content creator, so I make a little bit of money. Not a lot, but a little. Not enough to quit my day job. Maybe that'll change someday, who knows. And I enjoy it. But it kind of has to be all those things working together. The desire to travel, and then either making money or enjoying it, or both. There's some sort of Venn diagram where all three of those things overlap, and that's what makes points and miles possible. But I've also heard people say things like the process of like researching travel, getting the points and miles, getting the epic value, finding that hard to find plane ticket, business class ticket, free room upgrade, using it exactly the right time, double dipping, triple dipping, quadruple dipping. It's the thrill of the hunt that's more exciting than actually taking the trip. So I'll just use a real life example here. The most recent RIP trip I took in late April was to upstate New York, and that was to add to my presidential grave collection, which I did, and I accomplished those goals. I saw the New York State Capitol, and that was fun and good. But if I'm just being completely honest, that was probably the least fulfilling RIP trip that I've taken since I got into this. Of all my like 4-day, 5-day weekend getaways, this was probably my least favorite. Part of that's just dumb luck in that on all day Saturday and most of the day Sunday it was raining, so the weather was just icky. Even when I went to the waterfall, it was kind of icky. It was cold, you know, which is weird because usually I traveled late April and everything's gorgeous and beautiful, but maybe I picked a bad destination. Maybe instead of upstate New York, I should have gone to the Gulf Coast again or something like that. But I digress. You know, I came home and my wife said, "What was your favorite part of the trip?" And I said, honestly, it was when I ate supper with Matt. Matt Clausen and I ran into each other at the home of FDR and had supper together at a restaurant. Just chatting with, you know, one of my YouTube friends was probably my favorite part, which, you know, I was very happy to do. And Matt, if you're watching this, I had a great time. But, you know, my point is, there was no tours or landmarks or like awesome activities that I did, or like over-the-top lodging that was super swanky that was better than that. So this particular trip, I think the joy of planning it was actually greater than going on the trip, even though it was good. I was glad to get away, not have to work for a couple days. But if I could somehow bank the 2 days of fun for another time when the weather was good, I would, but you can't control that. But anyway, back to my original point. Do you get more joy out of playing the game or more joy out of actually going on the trips? Here's another analogy that I would use to describe my particular situation. So up until 2021, I officiated high school football for about 15 years. And people didn't ask me a lot, but when they did ask me this, they would want to know, are you in it for the money or are you in it because you enjoy officiating football? And my answer would be something like this. I do it because I enjoy it, but the money part has to be there so that I can give myself the right to enjoy it. In other words, you know, I would probably make around $1,000 a season, which isn't that much, honestly. And if you don't know anything about football officiating, at least here in Iowa, when you start out, you're mostly doing small schools. I never really moved up to the really big schools. So you're starting in the Des Moines area, you're going to some small school in northern Iowa, you have to drive an hour and a half to get there. So you're meeting with your 4 buddies on a Friday at 4 o'clock, driving somewhere. You don't get home till 11:30 or midnight. You know, so 8 hours of effort and you made $85. That's a little over $10 an hour. So it's nice to have the $10 an hour, but that's not why I do it. But on the other hand, if I didn't get paid at all, it would be very hard for me to look at my family and say, hey, I'm going to leave every single Friday for 10 weeks in the fall and not see you. So the two things have to go together. The pay and the joy of officiating football had to go together to make that work. I had to get just enough pay to be able to have the excuse of doing it. Likewise, with points and miles, am I in it because I enjoy the game or because I have the desire to travel. And much like the taco commercial with the little girl from a decade ago, why not both? In my case, I'd say the joy of traveling and the joy of planning and playing the game are about equal. When everything comes together for travel, like our trip to England and Sweden, which was so perfect, I'm almost afraid to do it again because it won't live up to the first time around, was so perfect and so great. But when I think about the hours I took just, using points.me or something like that to find the flights, and planning, a year and a half in advance what cards I will get to make this happen, those kind of things. If I didn't enjoy the game, the trip payoff itself wouldn't be worthwhile. And you do have to plan ahead. In fact, I was just talking to a young married couple at our church recently. The man of the family, he's graduating from a seminary, and as part of his final thing in his final year of college and seminary all put together, he gets to take a trip to Greece. But at the time, he didn't know that he'd be dating this girl and getting married when he first started, so they hadn't been saving for it, and the trip's in 2 weeks. And I said, kind of jokingly, but also serious, if you told me a year in advance, I could have helped you save up enough points that you could both go. But the point, and that's true, the point there is you have to start planning in advance. When I first started Points and Miles, I wasn't earning them and accruing them enough. Now I've got enough of a war chest that I've got enough points and miles to get me by for about a year and a half probably. So any accruing I'm doing now will be down the road. But that's another part of the fun of the game, is trying to, be balance strategy with being opportunistic. For example, maybe getting the Sapphire Preferred a second time around wasn't on your radar, but then all of a sudden when the sign-up bonus went from 60k to 100k plus a referral bonus, if you're in player 2 mode, maybe it should be on your radar. Incidentally, neither my wife and I are eligible because I already have a Sapphire Reserve and I don't want to end it, and she got the bonus within the last 48 months. So if the bonus hangs in there till late August, I'm okay. Tell me your thoughts, put comments down below. Is it the joy of playing the game, or is it the travel itself, or if it's an overlapping Venn diagram, where does it fit on the Venn diagram? Is it 60-40 with travel being the 60? Is it 60-40 with playing the game being the 60? I'd love to hear your comments. And as always, don't forget to smash the thumbs up button, and may your spending be frugal, and may your points be plenteous. Thanks.